What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content that I'm uploading onto my channel, then feel free to subscribe, and you can also offer suggestions on topics and characters and storylines and whatnot that we can have discussions on later on in this channel.
So what I want to do here is kick off our whole Throwback Thursday by having a discussion on the death of Galactus. Now, for those of you guys who are new to my channel, Throwback Thursday is quite literally when we just jump to stories that took place before Secret Wars, before DC Rebirth, even before the New 52, and just look at classic stories from DC, Marvel, and various other publications, Valiant, Image, and so on and so forth. But the idea is to show you guys that there are still some great stories out there. Not only that, there are some stories that came before Secret Wars and DC Rebirth that I absolutely loved. And so, I really don't want to let these stories be passed by. I don't want to let those stories go without being told. And so the idea here is to basically bring you these stories. Now, the death of Galactus is really more of setting the stage for future things. And what I mean here is, in the 1990s, we've talked about this before on my channel. In the 1990s, things were in a state of flux, for the comic book industry. DC was a little better off than Marvel was. And the reason why is, while both companies were suffering, while sales for both companies were at their lowest, simply because of the big comic bust, because people stopped buying comics after they came to realize that, the death of Superman wasn't going to be worth $20,000 in 20 years. The sales were at an all-time low, but Warner Brothers had purchased DC Comics. And so DC had corporate backing. So even if they went to their lowest, there would always be money that would be dumped into them to make sure that characters like Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman, the Justice League, that they all stayed around. With Marvel Comics, it wasn't that way. Marvel Comics was quite literally flying by the seat of their pants. The idea was they just got to crank out stories as best they can. And so Galactus the Devourer brings us this. It brings us an attempt to both boost the sales of Marvel Comics, even if it's only by virtue of this one story, as well as set the stage for a complete revitalization of the Fantastic Four, because during this time, the Fantastic Four just weren't selling. Those of you guys who saw my history or my videos on Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four, that run and probably Mark Waid's run before that were really the only two instances within the last maybe 15 years that the Fantastic Four actually had good runs. Prior to those two story arcs, there really wasn't a whole lot going on. The Fantastic Four were really slipping in popularity. So as we jump into this, what we do is we have Louise Simonson, who's writing this, basically kind of refreshing us on the Silver Surfer. Now, there are some aspects that tie into this. For example, there was a point at which Silver Surfer's home planet of Zenla was restored by Galactus, but then it ended up dissolving. Silver Surfer had been imprisoned on Earth, as we knew when he first showed up, when he turned against Galactus. After a while, he was allowed to escape his exile, but the problem with this is that along the journey of his character's, creation, along the path of his publication history as he was written by different writers, leading up to this point, the Silver Surfer had basically just lost what it was that made him human, or at least as close to human as he could get, that made him unique. And so the Silver Surfer in this segment of his publication history and this part of his life is back on Earth in an attempt to kind of regain his humanity. And his ability to do this was brought on by a woman named Alicia Masters. Now, a lot of you guys know Alicia Masters as the girlfriend of Ben Grimm. They had a strong relationship, and it was really a way to ground Ben Grimm's character and to make him appear more human than he actually was. The problem with this was that Silver Surfer was struggling. Ben Grimm would always do well because he was always with the Fantastic Four. Coming out of the original Secret Wars event, when he had basically left Alicia Masters and so on and so forth, when he was replaced with She-Hulk and various other people to be the strong guy, so to speak, for the Fantastic Four, Marvel began to shift Alicia Masters away from being the girlfriend of Ben Grimm to being the girlfriend of Silver Surfer. And she allowed him to regain his humanity. Not only that, Alicia Masters experienced some expansions to her own character in the sense that, yes, she remained blind. There was a point whereby Silver Surfer restored her sight, but that was temporary. But she also has like a nanotech armor that allows her to, go into the depths of space and to follow Silver Surfer alongside his journeys. And so this part of the story just kind of gives us that. It just tells us Silver Surfer is still operating as a hero on Earth. He's doing what he can, just kind of operating, alone, but also working alongside the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and so on. But it also shows us that there are some issues that go on between himself and Ben Grimm, that Ben Grimm's still not really happy about the fact that Alicia Masters is with Silver Surfer as opposed to being with him. But the fact remains here that the plot as it takes place in this part of the story is pretty small time, in the sense that Mole Man has basically shown up with his own Moloids and they have their own little campaign, so on and so forth. Not the biggest thing. It's just kind of giving us a refresher. The real aspect of Galactus, or I guess the real part of the story that begins moving into the territory of the death of Galactus, is when Galactus himself arrives on Earth. Now, the arrival of Galactus at Earth is a huge thing, and the reason why why is because when he originally encountered the Fantastic Four, there were a couple instances when he returned, but on the whole, Johnny Storm had secured the Ultimate Nullifier, which is capable of wiping out whatever it is that is pointed at, and Reed Richards had used it on Galactus, basically saying, if you ever come back here trying to consume the Earth, you will be destroyed. We will wipe you out. And so Galactus had always sort of stayed away. But the question that existed is, what would have happened if Galactus had died? And that's the crux behind the story. It tells us what happens, or at the very least, it lays the groundwork for telling us what happens later on, which I'll reveal at the end of this story. But the fact remains that with Galactus showing up back at Earth again, Silver Surfer immediately becomes aware of his presence, just because there's kind of a bond there. You know, when it comes to Galactus and his heralds or even former heralds always know of where he's located at any one particular time. This also comes with the power cosmic, which allows his heralds to have, you know, cosmic awareness, which is to say, to know everything that's going on in the universe at that particular point in time. But what we also learn is that Galactus does not come alone. That Galactus has his own herald named Redshift. Now, Redshift is going to be very, very fast in the story. That is to say, he's not going to last long. Because of the fact that Silver Surfer still resides on Earth, Galactus has basically, you know, shown up here, but also realizes that the Silver Surfer will oppose him. And so under the, under the orders of Galactus, Redshift attacks Silver Surfer and confines both the Surfer and Alicia Masters into a black hole, basically laying the landscape for Galactus to begin consuming Earth. The problem with this is that, you know, Redshift has been confined to this black hole in the same way that Silver Surfer and Alicia Masters have. But in addition to this, we also learn what's going on with Galactus himself. Now, initially, Silver Surfer is able to hold his own against Redshift, and in fact, he actually ends up killing Redshift. The problem with this is that with the two of them being stuck inside of a black hole and presumably being unable to escape, because of the fact that it is the Silver Surfer, because of the fact that he's able to use all different forms of the power cosmic, Louise Simonson really stretches the limits of credulity here and basically has the Silver Surfer shrink himself down to the point where he's able to access the microverse, which is a universe within our main universe on an extremely microscopic level. For those of you guys who saw the Ant-Man movie, when Scott Lang was shrinking down smaller and smaller, he was reaching the point whereby he would actually access the microverse. It's that small, and it has its own inhabitants and all that kind of good stuff. But Silver Surfer shrinks down to the size of the microverse, basically like moves through the particles of the black hole, and then is able to escape back into normal space. Like I said, it's really stretching the limits of credulity here. But the fact remains that it allows the Silver Surfer to re-emerge. The problem with this is that when he comes back to the planet Earth, the arrival of Galactus has drawn the attention of the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, all the Earth superheroes, and it's really just panic mode. It's, oh my god, Galactus is here, he's gonna consume the world, we've got to do something. Now, because of the fact that Silver Surfer is so close to Galactus, the first thing he does is ask, why are you doing this? And what we find out is because Silver Surfer was so important for the survival of Galactus, meaning that Silver Surfer traveled around the cosmos, took Galactus to planets that were that lacked sentient life, but had the kind of elements necessary for Galactus to consume and keep himself alive. When Silver Surfer had vacated, none of the heralds were able to really hold up to the legacy that he created. They weren't really able to serve the same function. And so the result is that over the years that Silver Surfer has been gone, Galactus has been growing continually hungry. He's basically become ravenous, and that's what's happening here. Instead of going around and consuming planets that lack sentient life but have the kind of things he needs to survive, instead he's eating whatever he can find, which means consuming sentient life, consuming the energies of people, even if it's necessary. And so for the most part, Louise Simonson gives us what we would expect to see, which is you know, the various superheroes doing what they can to face off against them. Now, you do see superheroes here like Thor, you do see superheroes like Scarlet Witch. One of the things that I want to point out here, especially with Scarlet Witch herself, is those of you guys who are looking at this comic now, but you may have, you know, picked up Marvel Comics with Secret Wars, or you may have picked up with, you know, Avengers Disassembled or House of M, the Scarlet Witch that you know of is a wildly powerful character. She's really a multiversal threat. When she, you know, stripped 98% of the mutant population of their powers during the House of M event, that was a multiversal effect. She affected all the mutants in every reality. It wasn't just the main Earth 616 continuity. I'm pretty sure that was established by Beast or Cyclops during the post, I think it was Decimation. But the fact remains here that this version of Scarlet Witch, as you see her now, is not this powerful. She is powerful, but she's really more confined to creating hexes and manipulating magic. She's not altering reality at this point in her life. And so because of this, you know, the superheroes, Wonder Man, the Fantastic Four, you know, they're really not able to do anything to hold off against Galactus. And so the Silver Surfer's kind of he's at a bad position here. Once he actually goes to see Galactus himself, you know, I guess the second time, he also begins to realize that Galactus is continually growing more sickly at a much faster rate. The result here is that Silver Surfer is basically in a quagmire, and he comes to the realization that because his absence sent Galactus down this path, he's going to have to return to Galactus and become his herald once again. And that's exactly what Silver Surfer does. He effectively leaves everything behind and he begins traveling the cosmos in order to find worlds for Galactus. Now, this is the caveat. Under normal circumstances, the Silver Surfer could just travel across the cosmos for weeks or months at a time trying to find a suitable planet. He does not have that kind of time frame here. Because Galactus is so ravenous, because Galactus is starving, because he's desperate and will do whatever he needs to do in order to consume planets and consume life in order to bolster his own energies, Silver Surfer's area of searching is actually pretty limited here. He really has to find a planet that the Galactus can consume that is not filled with sentient life in a very short amount of time. Now, while this is happening, the Fantastic Four are really focusing on a way to defeat Galactus. And this is also what's kind of interesting here is because we'll actually see them go about their own life. They'll actually go about, doing regular things once the threat of Galactus seems to have verified as being gone. But as Silver Surfer is going through his journeys, he eventually stumbles across a planet called Verdant and runs into a character named Mantis. Now, Mantis is a mixed bag, and Mantis really represents the times when Marvel just goes off the rails. And that happens. For those of you guys who are not really experienced with Marvel Comics, there are stories when they just lose it. They just lose their ever-loving mind. It all just goes to pot, and no one really knows why. But the idea behind Mantis was that she was an experiment by Marvel Comics to see if they could replace the former love interest of Silver Surfer, Shalabal, with a new love interest, whether or not fans would be receptive to that. Now, fans were kind of receptive, but at the same time, Silver Surfer had such a long-running history that fans wanted his history to remain intact. And much like, the initial response to Mary Jane Watson taking the place of Gwen Stacy after she died, fans did not want to see a character take the place of Shalabal, because the death of Shalabal was really the ongoing theme behind Silver Surfer. It was the ongoing theme of why he felt life to be so valuable. And so because of this, there was a point at which, both Shalabal and Mantis were taken prisoner by the Elders of the Universe, and they were caught in an explosion. Shalabal survived, and Mantis was presumed dead. The problem with this was that Marvel also found that there was somewhat of an audience here. And so what they did is they basically had Mantis's consciousness spread all across the universe, and Silver Surfer would just run into her at different points during his publication history, and different versions of her would be depicted different ways, which allowed Marvel to experiment on which version fans liked, and then keep that version going in the comics. And so at this particular point, this is where, Silver Surfer runs upon a version of herself who isn't really villainous, or she's not really evil. She's really more of a person that enjoys life and understands the value of life, but she's also familiar with the history of Silver Surfer. And when the point came when she had died, when her consciousness was spread across the universe, the Silver Surfer had already vacated his position as a Herald of Galactus. And so when she stumbles into him and she finds he's a Herald of Galactus yet again, the question is, why are you here? The most logical answer being, I'm trying to find a planet that Galactus can consume. And so what they end up doing is both Silver Surfer and Mantis begin traveling around together trying to find other planets that Galactus can consume. Now this is actually going to be a huge act of betrayal on behalf of Silver Surfer. And what I mean is that when they find a planet that has sentient life, but it's not intelligent sentient life, which means that it has dinosaurs and primitive life and so on and so forth that wouldn't recognize that their own doom is coming, when they go back to Galactus and they tell him they found a planet, Galactus lashes out. And the reason he lashes out is because he knows that Silver Surfer had traveled to Verdant. He knows that the planet that Mantis was already on is a planet that could easily sustain him. Instead, Silver Surfer wants Galactus to travel farther than he needs to find a planet worth consuming. And so this really creates an interesting dichotomy between the two, because Silver Surfer believes he's operating on behalf of Galactus, and Galactus was mostly under the mindset of trusting wherever it was the Silver Surfer would send him. But because he's so ravenous and because he's so desperate, he takes a very dictatorial approach and says that the Silver Surfer will take him where Galactus wants to be taken. The Silver Surfer will not take Galactus where the Silver Surfer thinks Galactus should go. And so again, the idea here is that he basically, it seems like Galactus is more or less gone insane, that he's basically lost his mind. And so the idea is that Galactus is effectively going to consume Verdant, which he does. He consumes the entirety of Verdant, and Mantis dies in the process. Now, again, Galactus takes a very dark approach here. He tells the Silver Surfer, yes, I'm costing you all the things that you like, but I don't care, you're my herald. Take me to a planet that I can consume. And so because of the fact that Galactus seems to have lost his mind in its entirety, Silver Surfer comes up with a plan. He basically comes to the conclusion that Galactus is beyond the point of return, that there's really no retribution here. There's no way to send Galactus back to being his normal self. And so he comes up with the idea that the Shi'ar can destroy Galactus. Now, the reason why Silver Surfer came up with this plan is in Marvel Comics, there was a story called Operation Galactic Storm. And this really dealt with the Kree. It dealt with the fact that their race was frozen in time. I've got a video on that about the history of the Kree that you're welcome to check out in the description if you guys want to learn more about them. But the fact remains that Operation Galactic Storm was really a ruse. It was a campaign created by the Kree Supreme Ruler, or I guess the Supreme Intelligence, in order to jumpstart their race's evolution. And it initiated a war with the Shi'ar, knowing the Shi'ar's weapons of extreme destruction would wipe out a majority of the Kree's race and then force the Kree to basically jumpstart in order for them to evolve, in order to survive. And so because of this, Silver Surfer knows that the Shi'ar Empire have a weapon capable of totally obliterating Galactus, or at least it seems they have a weapon capable of obliterating Galactus. And so when Silver Surfer arrives to meet with the Shi'ar Empire, they immediately believe that he's a herald of Galactus. Now, this is done for a couple reasons, and in fact, Louise Simonson is not wildly specific here. She doesn't really need to be, but she's not really specific here. We don't know if the Shi'ar Empire was watching the events on Earth and realized that Silver Surfer was now a herald of Galactus, or if they didn't know that Silver Surfer had abandoned Galactus and has returned to him. They don't really know that. All they know is that the Silver Surfer means the coming of Galactus, and so their idea is to defeat the Silver Surfer, interrogate him for information, and then turn around and see what they can do. The issue is that the arrival of the Silver Surfer, again, meeting with the Kree beforehand, informing them of what was going on, also meeting with the Starjammers, who are kind of like renegades within the Marvel Universe. He's basically kind of concocted a plan, and so his goal is to come to the Shi'ar Empire, tell them what's going on. Now, when he is initially taken prisoner, once he awakens, he basically says, Galactus has absolutely lost his mind. Galactus is just traveling around the cosmos now, consuming, planets that are rich with sentient life. It's something that I've always tried to avoid, but there's really no stopping him. The only thing that we can do is use the Shi'ar super weapon to destroy him. In addition to this, Silver Surfer had also contacted the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, and so this is really kind of like a Marvel Universe versus Galactus kind of scenario, which would make a really good title for this video. But the fact remains that it's really a, Galactus versus the Marvel Universe situation. It's everyone's attempt to stop Galactus. Now, something else to also take note of here is that the Shi'ar are, again, one of the most advanced societies in the universe. Because of this, they're well aware of a lot of things that go on, more specifically with the endeavors of Galactus. Now, because of the fact that Reed Richards had fended off against Galactus because he had sent Galactus running during their first encounter when he used the Ultimate Nullifier, even if the Shi'ar Empire doesn't really like Reed Richards per se, especially after the trial of Reed Richards' storyline, they also recognize that Reed Richards is quite possibly the smartest man in the entirety of the universe. Dr. Doom shares this position with him, which is why I say quite possibly, because it kind of goes back and forth between the two. But the fact remains that when it comes to the idea of Galactus, Reed Richards is kind of the foremost authority on this. And so because of the fact that Reed Richards is here, the question the Shi'ar Empire has is, if our super weapon doesn't work, do you have a device that can defeat Galactus? And Reed Richards says, I may not have one here right now, but we can make one. And so this is basically, again, an all hands on deck. It's the Avengers doing what they can. It's the Shi'ar Empire, working alongside the Kree and the Skrulls. It's really kind of a coming together that we'd never really seen before in the Marvel Universe. And so the result here is that once Galactus, or at least once they seem to be prepared, they all basically start launching an attack against Galactus in an attempt to destroy him. The issue is that when the ship crash lands, Galactus is actually not there. Instead, Galactus had basically duped them. Not only that, because of the fact that Galactus had realized that the entirety of the Marvel Universe was moving against him, Galactus had feasted on countless worlds for the purpose of taking out all those who would oppose him. Again, this basically just highlights how insane Galactus has gone. And so when he arrives, it's the totality of Galactus's power against all these superheroes. But at the same time, they also have different modifications, they have enhancements, all different kinds of technology that have been brought together by this vast inner working of races in an effort to defeat him. Now, while Silver Surfer does try to reason with Galactus one more time, this again also turns out to be a ruse. Galactus looks at Silver Surfer as a traitor, and the fact that the Silver Surfer had basically taken the forces of the universe and moved them against Galactus. But Silver Surfer says, look, you have to stop this yet, you have to bring this to an end. If you stop, then everything will be fine, but if you keep going, you're going to be destroyed. And while Galactus ignores this, in the end, the super weapon is launched. He's embroiled in really more energy than he seems to be able to take on. The energy is dispersed in its entirety, and Galactus seems to be completely defeated. The issue with this is that Galactus says, as he's dying and as his energy begins to emerge, that Galactus was not the threat here. That yes, Galactus was going insane, yes, he was dangerous, but he wasn't simply just running around consuming planets to keep himself alive, that he was the gatekeeper. But on the other side of this gate, now that now that he's gone and there's no gatekeeper to keep guard here, on the other side of this gate is a threat far worse than Galactus himself. For those of you guys who are very familiar with Marvel Comics, you know this threat actually comes in the creation or the reintroduction to the Marvel Universe of a multiversal guy named Abraxas. But with that being said, we're gonna bring this video to an end. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. It was actually a really cool set of events to see the entirety of the Marvel Universe moving towards Galactus, trying to defeat him. Now, the actual introduction of Abraxas takes place in the Fantastic Four stories. And this is why it's really cool, is because it involves the totality of Franklin Richards' powers. Doesn't it always involve Franklin Richards just fixing everything? But the fact remains that if you guys are interested in seeing something like that, make sure you guys drop a like, make sure you hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps, and leave a comment down below. Say, yes, Rob, I really want to see a story where Franklin Richards resurrects Galactus from the dead. I really want to see that happen. I really want to see a story where a guy named Abraxas starts going through the multiverse and killing off every version of Galactus in the multiverse. I want to see that happen. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.